What is happening? Welcome to the Somebody Like You podcast, where I am so stoked to have Melissa Segreto. Did I pronounce that right?
You sure did.
I've been
That's great.
saying I've been saying your name for weeks now since you've we'll get into it a little bit later, since you released your course on the Nickerson Institute, and we never officially met. So I kept saying your name Segreto. I started saying Sagrado, and all of a sudden I started remembering, I'm like, I need to pronounce this person's name right before. And I was like, before we get on here, let me ask her. And I didn't ask you in our waiting room. So Melissa, I'm so excited to have you here. Um, I want to give you a minute or two just to chat what you do, how you got here, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm so excited to be here too. I'm a health coach, and you want me to get right into my story and all about me?
A little bit, yeah. Let's just like you said, you're a health coach. I'm looking at your page here. You're an EFT practitioner, emotional freedom technique. You're SRT
Yes,
practitioner. Tell us
yes.
a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have a couple different certifications, but the health coaching is what I use primarily. At the end of the day, I help people who are struggling with their physical, with their mental, emotional health and well being. And I focus on the nervous system to heal those parts of the body. I came to this because of my own journey and health issues. And so it really drove me to, I think when I was going through all the things that I went through, it drove me to wanting to help and support other people, because that process when you're going through whatever it is that you're going through can be super lonely, super isolating, um, and knowing what that feels like, it was super important to me to want to help people and try to help them in the most rapid way I can possibly do that. So I have learned a variety of different modalities, but most of my focus really is around the brain, the nervous system, and helping to rewire the brain to heal the body.
I
Um,
love that. And
yeah.
I think, most of us that get involved in this kind of field, it starts from a place of our own journey. And then I think it's such a special gift to be able to turn around and be like, now that I've gone through a form of this, I want to be a guiding light to those to understand there is that glimmer of hope. There is a way out. There is progress to be had when all hope is essentially feeling like it's lost.
Mhm.
So, what was part of your journey that, like you said, you've gone through some stuff personally, like obviously whatever you feel comfortable sharing, like what part of your journey got you to this point of I need to help people?
Well, there's a lot to unload here. Okay, so I'm a mom. I've got three children. And when I was, after having my third daughter, I had a slew of health issues. The whole pregnancy was a bit of a disaster. And something just didn't feel right in my body. And from that pregnancy, soon after my daughter was born, we found out we had mold in our home. And so that mold led to, well, I'm going to say this and then I'm going to change what I mean by this. But initially, I'll say I blamed the mold and said it was the mold that created my illness. And it was almost like this switch kind of flipped. And suddenly I became super heightened to all chemicals and smells. I would break out into a rash. I was having digestive issues, hormonal issues, thyroid issues, experiencing hair loss. Like it was everything you could possibly think of that a person would really go through when it came to their health. I kind of experienced it, all of it. And then in doing so, I went through our medical system, which I will say is a wonderful system in many ways. But what I learned was there are many gaps. I think our system is typically built on like you have X this, so we will give you this medication or this is your diagnosis and you will have. And I did not fit that mold when I went to doctors, to many doctors that I think at some point they probably thought I had lost my mind. And, let me tell you, along the way, I probably felt like I was crazy too. But the reality was I knew that something was wrong and it wasn't right. And it took me, I'm in Canada, it took me going to the States and meeting some doctors who are naturopathic doctors and MDs. And I met a group of people who all had similar things like I did. They were sensitive to chemicals. And when I mean sensitive, I mean I could not live in my home. I had to actually move out of my house. I moved into my parents' home. It was a lot. It took a toll on my family having a newborn baby for sure was, yeah, it was very, very difficult. And I actually remember at one point I was holding her, rocking her in what would have been my childhood room, thinking like, I'm going to die right now. I'm going to die right now. Like, I don't know that I'm going to make it through till tomorrow, because my body, it was like my body was completely shutting down. And before I went to go see the doctor in the US, I did end up finding out that there was mold in the home. So now we had it's because of the mold maybe that I'm feeling unwell. And so I'm backtracking a bit. So I went to go to the US to see these doctors, and they knew about mold illness and they knew all about it. But when I went there, it was very fear-based, because it was like, you have this gene that doesn't allow you to break down the mold, and your body absorbs the mold and you get really sick. And at first I thought, yes, that diagnosis that I've been looking for, that label, like, I'm not crazy. There's actually something going on here, right? And then it became, well, what am I going to do about it? There's mold everywhere. When you actually analyze most houses, when you go outdoors, there is mold everywhere and we cannot avoid it. So are we supposed to live in fear? And then I met this wonderful lady who actually taught me about the brain. And she said, look, everything that you are feeling is very real and very physical, but you can actually use your brain and change your brain to heal the body. And then that sent me back home with this whole new, okay, wait a minute, because now I can take my power back. Now I don't have to live in fear. And that in itself was work. I didn't go from just like, oh, I'm not afraid anymore, because I still wasn't living in my house. But it was very much about, wait a minute, all these different things that I'm having, digestive things, hormonal things, all of this stuff, it's all related. And what happened was, like when I said it was like that switch flipped, that's exactly what happened. It was like all these things led to this tipping point, and suddenly my brain and body were just like, this is too much. And there it went. And so then I started learning about rewiring. I went and saw different people speaking. I read books. I did courses. I went to groups and programs with different people who had similar things. And of course, through this process, I became quite anxious because I couldn't go to, my daughter didn't know what an escalator was until she was 6 years old, because we had never been to a mall. We had never gone anywhere because mama had to stay at home. And that's how bad it was. And then I started doing the work, and I started kind of merging and tweaking different things. And I started to see and notice, it wasn't so much that I noticed that I was feeling better. It was that more time would go by without a symptom. And I would think, oh, wow, 5 minutes just passed by and I was okay. And then I would start to go places and say, wow, I went to the grocery store and I was okay. And so incrementally, I started to heal and get better. And then eventually fully healed myself. And in going through that process, it was like, I came from having a supportive family, but let's be honest, I think everyone was just like, what is happening here? Nobody had even heard of chemical sensitivities, let alone everything else I was going through. And so it still was a very lonely and isolating process. And I would say I had depressed feelings too that arose from it all.
Oh my
So
gosh.
from that, it took me years to get better. It took me about 5 years or so. I can't remember now because my life now is so different that there is a bit of fog in all the details, which is a good thing, I guess, but difficult when you're trying to explain it. But yeah, and so in going through that, it's like, you know what? I know what that feels like, and I never want anybody else to feel like that again. And I blame the mold. And then as my process went on, I learned that I was actually, and I don't want to say responsible, but how I was conducting my life was not conducive to staying and being in a calm and healing state. So it taught me a lot about myself. And once I started working on the internal shifts and taking the blame off of external things, I became less fearful and more empowered. I shifted and my world around me shifted. And now I have no idea if my house has mold in it or not, but it doesn't matter because I'm fine, more than fine. So,
And that's something that would have ruled your life. It's almost the obsessive stuff of like, we have to check for mold weekly, daily, hourly almost.
Well, we went through the checks and everything else at the beginning to test the levels we're at, and got air
Mhm.
purifiers. And at one point, I was like wearing something around my neck, and all these gadgets that maybe some of them work. I don't know, but if someone could have sold me anything at that point in time, and I would have bought it. Let's
Yep.
just say that.
And you mentioned a lot of really powerful things there. One, you just had your third child, and then to be like, as a mother, I can only imagine now you're going through what you're going through from a mental health standpoint, but now you're being separated from your newborn and going on top of this. So then there's that separation. There's all like that had to be so emotionally not just draining, but charged. Like there had like everything you were feeling probably felt like it was tenfold because of the situation you were currently living in.
Oh, 100%. So when my daughter was born, she was with me, but for the first 3 months of her birth, I had to sleep in a chair because I could not recline back and lie down. So you're already going through so many things, hormonally, all of that, right? And then you're already lacking sleep, but on top of that, now you're sleeping in a chair. So it was really, really hard. And talk about from a mental health perspective, like the guilt, right? How can I parent my kids when I can't even, right? The guilt, the questioning of myself, like the why, the victim as well, like why did this happen to me? Like what did I do to deserve this? So meant the anger, um, a lot of a lot of emotions all coming up and having to kind of be worked through and processed for sure.
It's almost like it sounds like you're almost going through like active grieving during through every like going like it was just like that grieving process. Like you were just like checking these boxes as you were going along.
Yeah,
And then as you got like you said, that as you're going through that, there's that anger, there's the why is this happening to me, the can I do this? And now almost looking back, what I think a lot of people don't realize in those moments of like those trying times is you can look back now and be like, I was so much stronger than I ever would have given myself credit for if I didn't go through that.
100%. So what I will say with the on the just to touch on the grieving point,
Mhm.
definitely grieving throughout the entire process, but then also grieving after I got better, grieving at the time lost, grieving at the fact that I don't remember. I had many memory gaps, and even before, like through my whole life, many memory gaps, and I don't remember my youngest daughter's any milestones, any of that stuff. Right? I don't have, even though I was there for them, sort of.
Mhm.
I most definitely wasn't present, but I remember one day filling out her baby book of the memories and thinking, I don't have anything to put in this book. And then looking at my other two children's and saying, like, theirs is so full. And when she gets older, hers is empty because I don't know. And trying to ask my mom or my husband and say, does anybody remember when she did this and that? And I was back to the guilt too, right? Not being able to be there, not being and just grieving the whole loss of time. But what I will say is, if you asked me, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you asked me if I would go through it again to get to where I am now, I would say yes. I would say that this journey, I went somewhere to get help to heal from X, Y, and Z. And I came out of that. I'm getting goosebumps, so I'm talking here, but I came out of that as a completely different person. I live my life in such a different way. There are so many things that we take for granted when we're going in our busy, busy lives in our world that we're not present. And then there are so many things, like the day that I got to take my daughters to go for a pedicure, I was almost in tears. I went to a concert with my husband. I was crying at the concert. Just things that we take for granted, but also how I live my life. Like when I was talking, and how I am with my children, right? Like now with my children, we have something in our bathroom that's like, I love myself. Like I'm amazing. I can do anything. Well, before it was like, they'd have a birthday party and it was, is everything perfect? Is everybody happy? Is the food great and the decorations great? And I wasn't there. And now I'm like, okay, order pizza. I don't care. Like, let's do this. Let's have fun. We are here and we are in this moment. And it's like those moments. And I would say also the whole, pain to purpose. It really shifted. It's funny because I was always very interested in psychology and in the mind, and that's what I took in university. And then I switched. I graduated with that degree, but then I went into marketing because, well, that's where we make money and that's what you should do. And Melissa, you'd be really good in business because you'd be
Mhm.
super successful with your personality and blah, 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 blah. And I shifted. And so it's not that I disliked marketing, but it's really funny how everything that happened to me kind of brought me back to what I really love, which is people, helping people, working with the mind. And so it really brought me to my passion. Like,
That's incredible. I always find it so fascinating how I feel like people on this journey have lived such similar lives, and me and you in particular is I graduated from university with a degree in psychology, a minor in coaching. And then after that, I went through a series of things, and then I became a marketing director of a memory care community because you have a personality, you can relate to people, this and
yeah.
that. And I want to ask you, because as you were going through that stuff, right? I'm sure I don't know your timeline, but there becomes a version of me where I didn't recognize myself anymore. I spent so much time being that people pleaser that I don't call I wasn't a salesperson, but I was definitely acting a lot of the time, acting as if I was kind of, I don't want to say on top of the world, but I was doing better than I was actually doing. My mental health was rapidly declining,
Mm-hmm.
but I was seeing success in other places that weren't serving my mental health. So I kept doing things that was kind of, we'll say, anchoring me down.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find throughout that process that there was this like clicking point of you were like, I'm not me anymore? And then did this kind of
Ooh.
start spiraling?
Okay. Yes. So first of all, I think for a long time I liked blaming the mold. It was easier. It's a
Mm,
lot easier. Hey
you
mold,
gave
you
me
got me
chills
sick. It's
there.
your
That
fault, not my fault. It's your fault.
uh
But then when I had, so I was resistant to actually believing that, wait a minute, Melissa, there's things here, like the fact that everything always has to be perfect, the fact that you've most of your life always been a bit of a worrier, right? Definitely the people pleasing, so many things. And so, um, yes, like after I went through, I think it happened more for me though after I went through it. So at first I was resistant. I went through all those things. And then after I went through and started to get better, it was like um I don't quite fit into my life anymore. Even
wow.
even and my relationships all shifted. So first of all, there was friendships. I had one friend that stuck by me through the process. And man, do I thank her all the time because I was not in a place of being able to pick up the phone and say, hey, so and so, how are you today? Because really, I was like, how am I getting through the next minute in my day, in my life, and trying to survive? So it was difficult for somebody to stay and to be my friend in that time. Um, so there was a shift in friendships. There was even a shift in things like with my children. And I still go through this now where I find there's that, the way that we live our life is so much about doing, like to offer our children the best. Everybody must be in a competitive sport and there's nothing wrong with those things. But the point is it's everything is so scheduled and so um, the best of the best of the best and the go and the go and the go. And I have a really hard time with that. It's like I'm kind of fighting against that now, just to say, what about we just sit and don't do anything? What if we just sit on the couch and watch a movie or go for a walk or go apple picking or do nothing at all? Just play, like just be in our house and be bored. What if we just be bored for a couple minutes? You know? So I find that it was after I went through kind of, because when I was in it, I was so focused on being in it. And it was my full-time job, my work every day was the rewiring because um, it was really like, look, I want my life back. And there is a choice, and the choice sucks because doing the work isn't always easy, but there's still a choice. There's a choice to fold and feel like this every single day. And is that what I want to feel like? No. So I think my focus there was really on making the shifts and doing the work. And then once I got through it, it was like, wait a minute, who am I now? And how do I interact with all the people around me? And it was a very weird process.
Strange, right? And you said, I want to get my life back. And something I've learned along the way is like what my life looked like then, I'm not getting back because
100%.
it's going to look so different, because how could I ever go back to being that person after going through the things I've gone through? Like,
Mhm.
I just can't have that. I always say, like, we have to like sprinkle a little bit of fuck it into our lives. Like,
Yes,
and like, so like
100%.
I lived with that recipe for a long time, and then I went through some stuff, and then it became like, I remember like what you're talking about. My full-time job was not going crazy. Like, that's what it was. Like, I went through like uh, severe panic disorder isn't really a diagnosis, but my panic disorder was real. Like, it was rolling panic attacks. I would have them day after day after, and like it became a full-time job just to feel like you're surviving. Like, just to
Mhm.
survive is a full-time job.
Yeah.
How could you ever go back to being carefree, or what you thought was carefree, after going through 2 years of those kind of things? And so I want to ask you a question. Is, like you said, you put in a lot of work, and obviously, like, I'm sure, like, neural pathways, you're having like retraining neuroplasticity, like all of these things. Like, what did you like? Where did you start? So for anybody listening that's going through some stuff right now, like, where did you and how did you start your journey of feeling better?
Mhm. Okay, so first, I just wanted to go back and say, now at the beginning of my journey, the goal was like, I want my life back. And now I actually realized, no, I'm creating a new one, because that life before is kind of what led me to where I got to, right?
Ooh,
So
yes.
now it's like, I don't want that life. It's actually a better one. So you go to reclaim the life that you had, but in fact, in the process, you create the life that you really want and deserve and are worthy of. So it's different. But in terms of where I started, oh, geez. Okay. Um, so the reason why I do what I do is to help people save the steps, because I had no idea what I was doing and I had no support. And I'm like, okay, how can I heal from anxiety and thyroid issues and digestive issues and my hair's falling out in clumps and this and this and this and this and this and chronic fatigue and pain and literally everything? How can I heal from this? What am I going to do? Um, that's where I think my program comes in to help, but also having somebody like with the coaching, I think that's where that helps people. So how I started isn't necessarily how I would recommend others start, but I would say definitely you need a support system. I think I read a lot. I think that reading helped me to, and it took a while to change all of my core beliefs, but reading to help me to understand about neuroplasticity, about the brain, about how, oh, wait a minute, like Joe Dispenza was one of the people that I read early on, very, very early on. Dr. Norman Doidge, I actually went to go see him talk in person.
Nice.
So hearing these people speaking and talking about how the brain can change, and then seeing videos of people that were in fact healing from things that we would even label as something that you have to have your whole life. For example, an autoimmune, right? We have to live with these things, and it's about management of symptoms. When actually, what I think that keeps us in a box, and I think my purpose here is to bust that box right open for anybody who really thinks that that's how they have to live.
Mm.
So for myself, it was a lot of reading at first. And it's like I needed some testimonials. I needed to say, like, okay, no, Melissa, remember Joe did this? I'm talking to him like he's my friend, but
Yeah.
Dr. Joe Dispenza, like, he did this. He was told he had to go through back surgery and he couldn't move. And he was, okay, so he did that. And this person did this. And Dr. Norman Doidge showed me so many examples of all these people who could do this. And then it was finding, great, now that I'm reading about this and learning about what it is and that it can work, how do I do it? Give someone tell me how to do it. Show me the
And
way.
how important is it, just like the reading part of it, right? So like you're changing. You used to be presented old problems and you would solve them in ways that you knew how. Well, now,
Mhm,
like we talk about neuroplasticity. Well, now through all of your readings, you're starting to change the way your brain's working. You're
mhm,
starting to now notice things differently than you used to. Like you talk about that box.
mhm.
Well, we're all in our own individual boxes. Sometimes it's a societal box, whatever it may be. And what it sounds like you started to do is like you step by step started changing the way you're now intaking the information without even any of the output yet. It's the way you were intaking information and the way you started that change is like the beginning of it, is what it sounds
Mhm.
like.
Yes. But also, when I was reading, there were many times, especially right at the beginning, where I could not retain a darn thing, or I'd have to read something. Because at that point, it was like my system wasn't working. I was dealing with so many. My brain was in this loop of you are not safe. And every single thing around you is a danger to you. It was that fight or flight. It was like a tiger was chasing after me every second of the day. And so even when it came to reading, even that I would have to reread or do small bits. And then in time I could do more. Um, and then I did go when I started researching about the brain, I started looking up different people and started checking out some of their programs, and I would try different things, and then I would see some things that were really great in one that the other one didn't have, or they had this, and I actually kind of started to merge all these things together, but not all at once. And this is the problem, right? Is that we're coming from go 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 be, and our system is so revved up that in fact, when I'm like working with a client, one of the first things that I say to my clients is, you know what I want you to do right now? I want you to just pull back. I actually don't want you to go and read a million things. I don't want you to go and I actually want you to just
B.
reel it all in just a little bit. When there's things that you don't have to do right now, don't do them. That's the laundry can wait till tomorrow. It's going to be okay. But right now, bring it back in because we need to get that system to just, it doesn't know how to calm. So I think when you're in this process, and where I didn't have guidance was it's like, if I do more, I'm going to get the results faster. And in that state, you're still in this like, let's go, right? As opposed to actually, Melissa, go against everything you think you need to be doing and don't do more, do less. And let's see how that works. And it worked a lot better.
Are you ready to embark on a journey of holistic mental health training? The Nickerson Institute of Integrative Health Training could be the next transformative step on your path. Nickerson Institute's accredited 200-hour program provides the knowledge and tools you'll need to become a professional integrative mental health coach. From mind-body connections, neuropsychology, spirituality, energy psychology, and beyond. With Dr. Nickerson's guidance and support, you'll learn motivational interviewing, attunement, cognitive behavioral coaching, and trauma-informed care to truly connect with your clients so you can help them in bringing about sustainable results. In this accredited hybrid format program, you can work through the videos and core content at your own pace and engage with Dr. Nickerson and other trainees live in bi-weekly discussions and presentations. Beyond the Certified Mental Health Coach training program, Nickerson Institute also offers courses and programs for corporate coaching, continuing education, and personal development. Whether you're a healthcare professional, a wellness enthusiast, or someone thinking about a career in coaching, consider the Nickerson Institute of Integrative Health Training for the next transformative step on your path. To learn more and download the full brochure, visit www.nickersoninstitute.com.
It really worked a lot better.
It's so crazy to think about because like you have this overall feeling of how you want to feel, and usually that's relaxed in the moment. I want to feel calm, I want to feel aligned, I want to feel secure, and I want to feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
But we often do things complete opposite of those things to feel that way. And
Mm-hmm.
like that doesn't make sense. Like it's one of those like,
Yes.
why do I need to be in survival mode all of the time to eventually feel safe, secure, aligned, calm, present? It's like, no, what we need to do is feel those things and recognize actually what those things feel like. Because I don't think a lot of us have this idea of what those things feel like. And this hustle culture of you have to grind, 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 grind to get there. It's just not true. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a place in your being of
Mm-hmm.
like, that's why like even the meditation, like just mindfulness practices, whatever it may be for individual people, like the idea of doing all of these things and grinding so hard to get to this place of safety,
Mm-hmm.
we should really start from that place. And well, I think we have to learn to get to that place first. um
It's really funny because this reminds me, I remember I always say, like, I don't think I took my first breath until I was 26, because I like my first real, actual deep breath. Because I remember one day I was doing yoga with my husband, and we're doing yoga, and he's like, Mel, breathe. And I'm like, I am breathing. It's like, really? It was like just doing it to check the box because so, I think it took me this really to get me. And I will say too, it's not that hustle, it's all around us. So it's not like you do this work and then you're like, oh, I'm all better and everything is fine. It is that you need to just, I have a tendency to sometimes want to be like, okay, let's go. Okay, I have to bring myself back. The difference is that now I can see the signs a lot sooner, and I'm much more conscious and aware of what is going on, so that when it happens, I can take that moment of pausing and then shifting, so that it doesn't lead to that same kind of looping patterns, what I would call them, as what I went through in the past.
And that's healing. And I think there's this misconception. This is something I talk about on my coaching calls, is like the healing's never finished. Like there's never
Mhm.
like this checkered flag where it's like, all right, you're done.
Yeah.
Everything is just rainbows and sunshine. Like, no, like we've all gone through things. Like what happens is you start, like you said, recognizing it earlier, which is huge, because then you're gonna, when that trigger happens, you're not going into the spiral as deeply as you used to. I
Hmm.
always consider, like, think of it as like a knife stabbing you in the side. Well, when there's no healing involved, that goes deep. Well, the more you work through it, the more you recognize, the more you figure things out, like things that you connect with. Well, that when that comes, it's no longer now a giant stab into your side. It's more of a, maybe a punch or a pinch or just a cut, like a paper,
Hmm.
like, and like it doesn't mean it's not happening. It just
Hmm.
means that progress is healing. There's just
Hmm.
no finish line to this healing.
Right.
So
Right.
when you when did you realize like that momentum? Like when you were just kind of, like you said, there was moments like you went to the grocery store and you're like, holy shit, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I survived that.
Yeah.
Well, like along that exposure therapy and all those things, like when was that moment when you saw that light where you're like, holy shit, I can do this?
Okay, so that's a good question. So I think that my process, what everybody thinks it's like a linear, it's going to be like, I'm just going to keep, and my process was very much like this.
Like a spiral staircase.
Yep. But what I always say to like my clients is that is the process, but if you keep going, it always comes out on top. The
Mhm.
only difference between people who heal and people who don't are the people who just keep going and do, like, right. That's the only difference. Like there's no difference. I am not some magical, like, well, I'm not. I'm just
Don't
saying.
dim your shine, girl. You are magical.
I'm just saying there's no difference between me and somebody else. The only difference was that in those, like, it's the difference is that in those moments when you really have nothing left in you and you don't want to do it, that's when that is when you need to do it the most. And every time you say to yourself, like, where do I want to be and what do I want, it's that drive and that goal of like, no, I'm not giving up, I'm doing this. And because I don't want to do it, I'm going to do it that much more, because then I know that I'm actually rewiring my brain that much better or faster in those moments. So I don't know if I had an exact, it was little, it was just little things, like even to this day, which is really funny, but my family went to Disney, and we, we stayed in hotels and we did all these things. And it wasn't until after the trip that I was like, that's pretty awesome that my brain doesn't even go to thinking about it. Like, it's just like I can just live. Whereas before it was like, well, first I couldn't do it at all. And then it was, we needed to call the hotel room, no cleaning products. Did I usually have like a headache or reaction to things? Like, I'm going to need some downtime after, because I know in these days I'll be going and then experiencing going out places that are going to create symptoms. And the next few days, my system's going to crash and I just need to have rest days that I would have to like plan afterwards to balance it out. So I think there were just little things of that, of noticing along the way of longer periods. And then I think it was people around me that were kind of like, you realize that you just did this. Because what happens is and I see this with my clients, we get comfortable in our, what I call new normal, that we actually forget our progress. So one of the things for me was journaling my progress. And it was actually about a month ago, I was just cleaning through my house and I found all of my old things. And I opened up my book and I actually cried when I read it because it was like my goal was to go into my child's school. My goal was to go to the grocery store. My goal was to go 20 minutes without a symptom. Like the things at the time that I was celebrating as progress, like I was able to walk around my block and feel okay. I was able to have a conversation with somebody wearing perfume and I only had a headache for a couple of minutes. Right. And so when I saw that, I thought, wow, but then also it made me feel this like almost love and respect for myself. Like, look at exactly what you said before. Look at what you went through. Right. And some could say that's weakness or whatever it is. I never gave up on myself. I never gave up on my life. And although I did miss time with my children, I can't go back. So that guilt that I feel about that, I actually take now into my present and I say, I'm here now. And in now I choose how this moment can go with my family. And I choose to make these moments magical and amazing. And yeah, we still have our stuff that happens and our tantrum and our fighting and all those things. But the way that we respond, how we interact with each other, how we live our lives is so different. So I'm going to make the best of right now. And then I'm going to help as many people as possible so that they can do the exact same thing because they're just like me.
Everybody's just somebody like you. And that's
100%.
and
I
what's
love
so
it.
cool is you get to look back on that journey, right? Because you're right, the new normal. When we are able to, like, because I oftentimes take for granted that I can go to dinner with my fiance. I
Yeah.
couldn't do that for a very long. I couldn't leave. I was agoraphobic. I couldn't leave my house. And if I did leave my house, I would have to take Valium with me.
Yeah.
And then when I took Valium, I had health anxiety that something was going to trigger with the Valium. Like it was just, these things. So then you just go into that downward spiral. And now we're trying to plan a vacation. And like I could never plan a vacation before. Like I couldn't go. Like I couldn't drive that far. I couldn't stay away from, my safety net of family. This like so being able to recognize, the new normal is the normal you prayed for a long time. And journaling is such a I don't journal as much as I should. I have some journals, but it's been a minute. Um, but to be able to look back, and see that you just wanted to be able to step into your child's school, and now you probably don't think twice about it.
Yeah. Oh, I've volunteered there. I was doing some tapping with the kindergarten kids last year. So it really has like it's definitely changed my life for the better. But we're all humans, we're always growing, we're always evolving, right? We're just and when you think you've got it all down, that's when life just hits you with a new fun and exciting thing to say, wait a minute, you're getting
You were getting comfortable.
you're too calm and comfortable. We gotta shake things up a little bit. But that's I almost look at life as like a game now. That's part of it. We just keep kind of moving and growing and shifting. And I tell my kids, like, if everybody was perfect and everything was great all the time, life would be so boring. And it doesn't mean that we want to feel like junk every day, but it means that we can get to a space of starting to sort of embrace life and the challenges, right?
Yeah. And I just had this conversation with my mom, and I had this conversation probably more frequently with people than they probably want to have. But without those days and without those experiences, you don't have these days. If everything was
Yeah.
always sunshine, it would be the new normal, and you would never understand what it's like for it to rain, so you would never appreciate the sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
um and I think about that, like even where like when you're going through your own business journey and stuff like that, like it has to be hard at some point, because
Mm.
just when you don't give up, and you don't learn the lessons through success. You learn the lessons through the trials, the obstacles, the struggles. You learn how to do the things like we were talking about before, like learning how to create websites, learning how to edit content, do
Oh, yeah.
podcasting, create courses, like all of those things you don't learn unless you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's it. And most people are not willing. It's sad in a way, but like, I mean, this was me. I would have kept going on the same course. They're not willing really to change until you get to that point of rock bottom where you really have no other choice. But I think about like on the business front, it really is about just being comfortable in the uncomfortable. We got to get used to the uncomfortable. My brother, actually, he'll say to himself, like, what am I going to fail at today? Like, it's having a totally different perspective, because that's how you live. You try new things. And that's where, even from a working perspective, I had to work on a lot of things. As somebody who came from like perfectionism, A-type, super organized, it has to be this way, to like being on a podcast, putting myself out there and doing things on social media, and all of it was so out. The helping people part was, I don't want to say the easy part, but the part that comes so naturally to me, because my being is just like, I want to help you. And I know clients that come to me, or people in general, they don't have the knowing because they haven't had the experience, but because I know what is possible for them, that even they don't know what's possible. I have like this fire and excitement and passion in me. I just know. So when they come to me, I'm like, I know you can change your life. I really have this knowing. It just is easier part. The other stuff is super uncomfortable, super uncomfortable.
Oh, like you said, the easy part's the helping people. Like I can jump. We were actually talking about like there's people in this world like you can jump on a call with. It was Wendy of the
Yeah.
Nickerson Institute, who's
Yeah.
actually listening, by the way. She's in the
Oh, is
comments,
she?
and like we said, like she
Amazing.
is somebody I could talk to for 4 hours, and
Yeah.
I would never know time existed. And
Yes.
and like in those things, like when it comes to helping people or connecting with people, super easy. I'm aligned. Like I've never been more sure of that's what I'm here to do. That is my purpose.
Yeah.
It's how to do that in a way that makes you successful, right? And
Hmm.
it's just kind of like that's the uncomfortable part because asking people for money to help them is very uncomfortable. It's kind of like, but I just enjoy doing this thing. I just enjoy helping people. I wish I could help everyone for free. I wish people would listen to the podcast and get something from it all the time. But it's one of those things like, okay, now I have to dive into that uncomfortable. What am I going to fail at? What am I going to learn today to
Yeah.
help me be better at what I'm doing? And I love that because the helping is easy, the rest
Yes.
is the work.
Yes. So I used to think exactly the same way as you. And I had a bit of a shift in perspective when it came to the financial piece, but it's because I still do work with clients. For example, if somebody cannot afford to pay for a service, but they really need help, I want to be there and help them. But I
Yep.
also see it as an exchange and an investment in themselves. So when somebody does put forward, like, is paying for a service, they are very invested, and that almost lights a fire in them to say like, no, I'm putting my money here because this is what I want for myself. So I've actually seen clients who have not paid for services, and ones who have, and the ones who have tend to be the ones that are in it to get better and to really heal themselves. And at the end of the day, the goal is it all comes from that passion and that healing, but the commitment has to come from the person, right? Like on those deepest, darkest days for myself, I was the one that had to literally pick myself up and say, you don't want to do this, but you're doing this. Let's go. We're doing this. Right.
That is like that's kind of where I'm at is because I had one of my first coaching clients said to me like, you know what, I have like you're gonna have to drag me to the coaching calls. You're gonna have to get it. And this weird thing came over me, and I was just like, no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to let you know the most important part of this is you showing up for you. Like what we do during that hour session is going to be magic. We're going to see progress. We're going to do all that. But I'm letting you know here's the secret sauce. Here's the formula. Here's all the ingredients you need. It's
Mm-hmm.
showing up.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone forces you to show up, you're not getting those 60 minutes aren't going to be what you want them to be. They're going to be begrudgingly being there. They're going to be like, oh, I don't want to be here. But when you invest with that money, you're like, well, he's getting paid for his time.
Mm-hmm.
She's getting paid for her time. Like, I'm showing up. I'm going to get that exchange back. So like that is so like and like that's the world of marketing, right? That's where I struggled in marketing because I wasn't really fulfilling. Like I was in the world of memory care, so I did feel I was helping families and helping individuals. So I kind of was able to sugarcoat it that way of being like, but at the end of the day, your bosses are like, these are about sales, these are about move-ins, these are
Mm-hmm.
about this. So like that was kind of like I felt slimy. I felt like I'm just selling people. Here, I don't feel like I'm selling, I'm helping people. And that
Mhm.
exchange of energy, that exchange of goods, where like if someone can't afford, like I do talk on the side and be like, what can you afford? Let's like we'll take it
Work
down to
something out.
we'll take it down to a half an hour if you can afford to have anywhere like for you to get started, and we'll
Mhm.
be able to work through this together. But that
Mhm.
commitment of yourself is always the most important. Like you said, that's what got you there. Like I need to show up for me, because when the lights are out, I'm all by myself in a room, like no one's here but me.
Mhm.
I need to know that I show up for myself.
Yes, and there were days when I did not show up. Let me tell you, it's not like every day was so perfect and it was a great day, but the difference was like, okay, today I didn't do the things that I needed to do. So sometimes I wanted to beat myself up for it, and then other times it was like, you know what? You are human. The journey of human is not to be perfect. We are steering away from the tendencies to be perfect. But because you did not do it yesterday, we're going to do it today. And
Mhm.
then we keep going and we build and we build and we build. Right. And even with clients who it's difficult to just show up, we can give them tools to help them, like to give them steps to help them to want to show up. But yeah, it really does. It has to come from within. There has to be that wanting. Yeah, for sure.
And that's where, like I say, like, because just kind of like most coaches do, like I'll offer like a 15-minute like intro call, a get to know each other call, see if we're the
Mhm.
right fit. And a lot of that call is also like me not trying to sell people on my coaching. It's trying to see like, are you committed to yourself? Because I'm letting people know, like upfront, like my job isn't to commit you to yourself. I work with people who are ready, like they're sick of their own shit, and they're like, I'm ready to do
Ready.
this. Like I am committed to me, and I choose you to help
Hmm.
me. And then from there, it's my job to be like, let's fucking go. Like
Yeah,
that now I'm ready to do this.
that's
And
it. It's yeah.
because like you just brought up so many good points. It's just kind of like the lessons of the days I don't show up for myself. Like they're not failures of days. What those days teach me is to be kind to myself.
Hmm.
That's not judge myself. Like
Hmm.
that's such a powerful lesson. Like the days I couldn't do it, just kind of like, did you love yourself though? Were you okay? Probably not. I probably like, and I kept having those days until I learned to give myself some grace. And once I started to learn to give myself some grace, I wasn't failing on those days. I was actually winning. I was like, now I'm actually relaxing instead of judging myself for not going for a 3-mile run or meditating for 20 minutes or doing these things. It's just kind of like, no, I learned how to like be kind to myself. What an
Hmm.
awesome gift on days I thought were failures.
But I think that's the biggest self-love. Isn't that at the root of really everything?
Yes.
Like it is. And that's where the biggest work is, but that's also where the challenges lie, the beliefs, the things that other people have ingrained in us and told us about ourselves. And so I think a lot of this work is about um, it's about a dismantling. It's about a dismantling and a releasing. And there's obviously some processing having to happen there around emotions of the old and then creating the new. So I talk to my clients like it's almost like a teeter-totter, right? And some days right now the teeter-totter is here because this is, the old, but we're shifting. We're starting to shift and it moves like this, right? As we start to create more of the new. And self-love is like a huge piece to that. So,
Oh, it's such a big thing. And what I've learned is through that is when you're going on those teeter-totter days, right? And you're having the days of integration, we can call them integration days. It's realizing like so much when we start doing things, we go completely full blown to the other side of the spectrum. And then because we started here, right? Just
mhm,
like whether it be dieting or exercising or meditating, whatever self-improvement thing you're doing. And all of a sudden, when you really start to understand like your healing, it's when you start getting into that middle place, that
yeah,
place that it just kind of like the teeter-tot, the seesaw is now starting to balance itself. There's not these big swings anymore. It's all of
mhm,
a sudden you're starting to realize like, maybe 7 days a week and eating this amount, like this and that, like isn't what it was for me. What it was finding the balance of my lifestyle, lifestyle that serves me. That's not just for my body and how I look, but all of a sudden, like for me, my working out is my mental health. Like I show up for my mental health, not to have an Olympic body, because that don't matter anymore. I am
Mhm.
35. That ain't coming. That ain't, I'm not
Oh, never say
21.
never.
Well, that's
Don't
not
be
my
the
goal.
boss.
That's not my goal. But I've learned that when I was striving for the extreme, I would never get there because I would burn out. That teeter
Yes.
totter would just be like so heavy in one direction that it was one of those things. So I love that you mentioned the teeter totter, and like those integration days and moments and sessions are so important, because self love is like you have to learn how to celebrate yourself when you
Mhm.
feel like there's nothing to celebrate. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, like as a coach, I don't know about you, but like I find myself getting so jacked up, like I like this emotion, like this energy release comes in. I'm just like, so many times during a call, I'm just like, I'm so fucking proud of you. Like I'm like, if no one else is gonna tell you, because like maybe I'm the only person you share this stuff with, like you are crushing it. And they're like, but I only did this. It's like, but that's something you didn't do 2 months ago. Like
100%.
you're breaking that pattern. And this is all pattern recognition and pattern rewiring. That's what we're doing.
Yes. And I think too, like with what you were talking about before, I think it's really looking at what are those choices or changes when we're going to an extreme? What are they rooted in? So I think when we're talking about self-love, for example, I think when we feel like we go 0 to 100 on diet, or I suddenly have to start implementing all these things, it's coming from a place of pressure. It's coming from I want to be there so, and desperation. I want to be here so bad. I want to drop 10 pounds so bad. I want to feel healthy so badly that I'm going to do this, as opposed to the self-loving way. And the self-loving way is the slow, steady, small changes and taking those breaks. And when we mess up, saying like, it's okay. I still love myself. Like I'm a human and I'm going to keep going and doing my best. I think the other instance keeps us in that fight or flight, keeps us in that stressed out state, because I had that. And every client that I see has that desperation. And I mean, how can you not? You feel miserable, you're super anxious, you have feelings of you're feeling depressed, whatever it is. You so badly just want to feel good. But it's that pressure and that desperation that is driving you. And that's why we have to kind of pull back and actually just slow it down and go the more self-loving route, right? Like I choose not to eat that food, as opposed to, oh, I can't eat chips and I can't eat chocolate. And trust me, I love chocolate and I do eat chocolate. But that I can't, versus like I choose not to because I love myself, and I choose nourishing foods because those foods make me feel really good. I just feel more energized and better when I don't. And sometimes when I'm at, it's a Friday night or I'm out somewhere and I want to have like a piece of cake, great. I'm going to enjoy myself and then I'm going to come back. Like, so it's the balance there too, right?
Yeah, the balance is big. And that's something I've learned along the way too. I always ask, one of my first questions on calls is not even questions. One of our first practices is like, all right, let's design the best version of yourself, the highest version of yourself, the highest you, like whatever that might be. Like, let's design that person. What does that person listen to when they wake up? What's their morning routine? What songs? What music? Like, just to the detail, right? Like
Mhm.
like I like to get people into understanding the person that they are, not just striving to be, but who they already are. We're just dusting. I always call it dusting off the artifacts. We're just dusting off, we're just painting, we're just doing a little bit more work here. And then from there I say, awesome, now what we're going to do is everything is going to be in service of that person. And
Yes.
then when they like think they're like screwing up, I say, well, does that best version of you, are they hypercritical, are they, or do they like, they understand, like they're just having this, and all of a sudden they start seeing like there is this balance and this flow to becoming the best version of you. It's this not just carefree but loving version of yourself, that you can
Mhm.
become these things that you want to become without this hustle culture, without this all or nothing mentality. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon upon a marathon upon. You're going to have good miles, you're going to have rough miles. Like you, and one of my favorite quotes to say too is like, flowers don't bloom year round. Like maybe like it's winter time for you right now. Like, but what you're doing right now is going to help you bloom in the spring.
Mhm.
So like, just because you're not blooming now doesn't mean nothing's working. It just means it's a game of double dutch. You're just
Right.
not ready to jump in yet. Like it's just kind of choosing your battles. And I think, yeah, like I disagree. I just agree. I didn't say I disagree. I
Yeah.
just agree. It is those integration days too. I keep coming back to it because those days are usually where I feel clients feel like they're failing.
Mhm.
There's no progress. Why am I doing this? It's like, oh, because these are the days you prayed for where it was so common sense that you wish like that when you were marrying the old version of yourself to the new version of yourself, that it was just like, oh, well, that was a lot easier than it was supposed to be. It's like, yeah, that's where we're at. That's where we're at.
Mhm.
We want it to feel easy.
Mhm.
But as we have about 7 minutes left here on the podcast, and I would be just besides myself if I didn't hear about your conscious healing course that you just created, you just released, and I want to hear what people can expect, what people can gain from that, and I'd just like to hear you talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I think the course is it's my baby because it's really my culmination of everything that I learned for myself. And the first half focuses a lot on the steps for rewiring. So I've got a formula in there to help people with the steps. And now it is a formula, but how I see healing is not so much as a formula that's going to go perfectly. I see healing as pieces of a puzzle, that. So I'm giving you all of the pieces that I wish I had to help me expedite my process because again, it took me a long time. And that first half of the course is really around looking at our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs, starting to be more conscious, more aware of our day to day, and taking you through the steps that I took in my rewiring process. And then the second half delves more into, when we come down to ourselves at our core, we are energy, right? So we talk more about things like self-love and getting into a flow state and what that means. And it's kind of working on continuing to create what I would refer to as, we give it a different name, but it's the same thing, the true self, right?
Mhm.
So the program is exactly what I said. It's that dismantling of all of the old stuff, how to pay attention, how to start changing it, and how to start creating and shifting ourselves out of that darkness, out of that suffering, how to move from a stressed out state to a healing state. Our body cannot heal when we are revved up, right? Our body needs to be, once we are, and this is the other thing, we get angry at our bodies. Like, I hate, my back again is hurting me. Our bodies are so intelligent. That pain is there to show you, can you please pay attention to me? Anxiety is there to show you, hey, you got to pay attention to me, right? There's that block of self love. Show me the love. I'm asking you to care for me. And we fear it. We fear it and we don't want things and we push them aside. And instead, it's having that different approach to say, well, my body's pretty awesome. If I can remove some of this interference, if I can remove the stories and the programming and all of this stuff I'm telling myself, and started to incrementally make some changes to the different aspects of my life, external triggers, how to handle different people, like, oh, this person makes me feel this way. It's looking at that differently. It's looking at stress differently. So this program I'm super passionate about because it is how I healed myself. And that's why, like, even in the program, I'm offering a 30-minute coaching session, because if anybody has questions or they need additional help, I really want to be there. Like, at my core, I am here to serve, and I know what it feels like. And you do not have to stay there. You don't have to manage symptoms. Like, for everybody who is struggling, you really don't. You can change your life. It may take some time. It may take work. There's going to be rough days, but then there's going to be more good days, and even more and even more. And you don't just heal from a diagnosis. You don't just have your back pain disappear. You change your life and you change who you are, and you actually step into your truth and you start to live that way. So that's what the program is. Yeah, it's all my learnings in one, and it is the process that I use to heal myself and change my life.
That's so powerful. And I think what I took from that, the most important thing is you just don't heal from a diagnosis, you change your life.
Yeah.
That's because I think a lot of us get caught in that idea of, all right, well, now I'm going to fix this. Well, now I'm going to fix this. Well, now I'm going
Right.
to fix this. And what I've learned along my way, and I'm assuming this is really what your course like teaches, is like, no, we're going to teach a life, not just a lifestyle, but a way that you are going to change your own life through the steps that you've gone through in your life
Hmm.
that is going to start knocking out a lot of things all at once, because a lot of things are rooted from the same things.
100%.
And I think that is, I always use like a radio station analogy, is you're operating on a frequency, right? Everything in this world is energy, frequency, and vibrations.
Hmm.
And what, like, you're operating on a frequency of dissonance. Like, you might have good days, there might be good songs that come on the radio, but majority of the times it's just a place of dissonance. What you want to do is change your frequency, right? You want to be vibrating at a
100%.
different frequency. And when you
100%.
do that, what your course sounds like it's doing is it's helping you change your frequency to a healing frequency and a frequency of harmony and alignment and stuff like
Yes.
that.
And all in the right timing, because at the beginning it is about making those shifts to get us out of the hole that we're in, for lack of a better word, right? It is about working that rewiring process, but then also shifting who we are on our day to day, how we live our life, to not recreate the same stressors that originally got us to where we are, right? And usually that's a combination of things. Like for myself, that perfect storm, it wasn't one thing. It was, I was super stressed out. I was working a lot. I had been pregnant and had a newborn child. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. I lived in a house with mold, did all these things built. And then what happened? My bathtub was just overflowing. And that tipping point, the mold, was, I blame the mold, but the mold was the tipping point. The reality was there was a lot of stress. There were some traumas and things there, and all of those things built up. And at some point, it became too much. And my body and mind were saying, "Hey, we gotta pull you back in here." And it was, my body was screaming, "Take care of me. Show me love. There's a better way. There's a better way."
Melissa, I'm so grateful for your story, for our connection. And I can't believe this was our first time actually like
I know.
chatting. Like I said, after the first 3 minutes, it's gonna be like we're just actually like shooting the shit and having a good time. I'm so grateful for you. And I mean, obviously I hope to have you back on because I was
Oh,
just I
yeah, I
loved
got some
how
new stuff coming. I'd love to come talk to you about it.
yes,
Feel the
when you
nervousness.
have that, for anyone listening, when Melissa has new stuff coming out, I would love to have her back on. You're gonna
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell everybody that. And I want to give you the last minute or so here just to let people know where they can find you. If they are interested in the course, if they are looking to reach out to you, just that kind of stuff, where they can find you, and
Yeah.
that's
So I
it.
see my Facebook group is listed right there. Evolve Health Coaching and Energy Clearing. You can find me there. Under my name, Melissa Segreto. I am on LinkedIn as well. I have my email, evolvewithmelissa@gmail.com, if you wanted to just get in touch with me there. And my course is offered at the Nickerson Institute. And right now, we put it out there for half price because I think there are a lot of people. We were talking about money before. There are so many people that I really think are struggling that need help. And so I'm really grateful to you for helping me to get the word out, because we can only help people if they see it and they know what's available to them. And when I was going through my stuff, I didn't know. I really didn't. I had no idea. So I'm hoping that it will help people. And I'm more than happy to support anybody along the way in their journey too.
Oh, Melissa. Well, thank you so much. Everybody, like I said, Melissa Segreto, you can find her on Facebook. You can find her on the Nickerson Institute under coaches. You can find her course on the same website, the nickersoninstitute.com/courses. It will be up there on the taskbar. Um, Melissa, hang out with me as we end this stream. We can kind of regroup after and just have a little bit of a debrief. And I wanted to thank everybody who tuned in. Wendy, thank you so much for tuning in. Wendy, who's been in the comments, she is actually the creator of the Nickerson Institute and a huge inspiration. I know I can speak for myself, and I know probably to
Oh,
you.
she is
It's
absolutely amazing.
awesome. So thank you everyone who tuned in. A big thank you to Melissa Segreto and to all the people listening, either on the live stream or the recording. I will catch you on the next one. Everyone, take care.
Thank you.